right, I want to thank you all for joining me. Our first inaugural meeting here. I've unofficially called this the ISO bar as we belly up to the weather bar and just kind of talk weather. Let's go around the Zoom room and just see who's who. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, we'll start down in Chicago with Emily.
All right. Hello. I'm Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls. I'm in Chicago and I'm with Fox 32. I have been here for about 3.5 years now. I'm originally from Michigan, so you're about to meet Rich, and I've been watching Rich for years. But yeah, I've been here for 3.5 years and loving the busy city.
Cool. Let's go over to Detroit. Rich.
Rob, Rich Luderman. I've been here at Fox 2 for 28 years now. It's a long time. I came here in 97. I'm from Pittsburgh, PA, born and raised. I went to Penn State. I was on active duty in the Air Force through ROTC. Through a fluke, I got out of the service to be on TV. My first job was in Utica, New York. That was in 1993. And I made the jump to Detroit in 97. And I'm a Great Lakes guy through and through. My whole life, I've lived in and around the Great Lakes, and I wouldn't live anywhere else.
Well, then we have that in common. Let's go up, check in with Ian up in Minnesota.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi everybody. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ian Leonard. I'm at Fox 9 here in Minneapolis. Been here 20 years. Before that, I was in Iowa for almost 4 years. And previous to that, just like Rob, I was on the air for many, many years for the CTV network in Western Canada. I was born and raised in Edmonton, and that's where I made it to the airwaves, starting as a part-time weekend weather person. And, I think I had 3 extra jobs just to try and make ends meet. Way back then, I walked out with a couple of quarters I could rub together. But yeah, I've been in Minnesota for 20 years, and it's been a great ride so far. But people always ask me, why Minnesota? Why didn't you go somewhere warm? And I always say, because Minnesota has 4 big, deep, hard seasons that, for me and for the rest of us who joined the ISO bar today, that's something I think most of us crave or want or need.
For sure. And just to finish it out here, as Ian said, I'm originally from Canada. I moved to Wisconsin in 2005. I've been here for 20 years. And yeah, the big calling card for me as well was that 4 big, beautiful seasons that, we get in full force. And that's kind of where we'll start our chat today, because here we are, kind of the midway point of meteorological spring. And we've had a very interesting spring for 2025 throughout the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest. For here in Wisconsin, a recent major hail event with tennis ball and baseball sized hail, which is a pretty uncommon event for South Central, Southeastern Wisconsin. But I wanted to ask you guys about some of the more major events in your markets. Ian, you're up. Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, we've had I'll tell you, it's been a very benign spring. We didn't have much of a winter. We average about 54-ish inches of snow. We ended up about 20 below that. So, here, we're at the northern end of the farm belt, and farming is big, big, big in Minnesota. So anytime we get through a winter where we don't have a deep snowpack that we can rely on to slowly melt as the ground thaws, our thoughts always turn to the farmers, our farming friends. Thankfully, we've had plenty of rain. We had our first severe thunderstorm warning about 5 days ago. But other than that, incredibly benign. We're about average for rainfall. We're about average for sun. And it's been a lovely, quiet spring. Now, I think we've all lived around these here parts long enough that every day you'll look at the charts. And I always do this. I always pretend that I use paper charts. I'm just going to leaf through those charts. But it's almost every day that you give it a second and even a third hard glance, because I don't know, like you all, but I'm always looking for the other shoe to drop. Like, this can't keep up. I've been here long enough. I've been doing the job 35 years. It's impossible for us to have a benign spring like this. But so far, no matter how far out I look, it is incredibly quiet for us. If we can just turn off the taps as we get through the next couple of weeks, it's almost planting season here for farmers, depending on where we are. So yeah, an incredibly benign spring. And I knock
It
out.
has been a wet spring here in Wisconsin as well, which has been a good thing because up until recently we've been in a pretty significant drought. Now I know Emily down in Chicago, also very wet conditions for you. How's your spring, first half of spring been for you?
It's been soggy, but I will say in March, things were actually pretty nice as far as temperatures went. We had a lot of rain, but things were nice if you wanted to be out and about. We had temperatures that were actually well above average. We ended up seeing our 10th warmest spring in the Chicagoland area for March. And then right now in April, we're kind of half and half so far. So we've had definitely some cooler stretches. And then right now, we're very much in a warm stretch. But when it comes to the stormy activity, we've been pretty active. So, typically for this time of the year, we're getting several rounds of severe storms, and that's what we're seeing. But the tornado count, just like last year and the year before, we're right up there. We've already met our average for the year, and it's only April. So it's been busy here.
It's been very, very active, and last spring was a very active one for you as well as it was here in Wisconsin. I want to go to Rich because, of course, this has been an interesting spring in northern Michigan and parts of northern Wisconsin as well for ice storms. It was quite the hit up in the UP in particular.
Big time. That event brought rain to the southern part of the state, so we missed out on all the ice, thankfully, but for Gaylord and Grayling, parts up near the Mackinac Bridge, into the UP, crippling ice storm a few weeks ago. And we're still doing stories on it, not necessarily we as in this station, but it's being talked about a lot because, of course, tourism season is starting shortly, especially on Mackinac Island, and they took a big hit on the island. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it is, you hear pure Michigan. Well, if you ever go to Mackinac Island, it is pure Michigan up there. The UP is a little more remote, but just devastating. And so I hope they're hoping to salvage, their tourism season. And they're going to have challenges moving forward. But we down here missed out on it. It was just rain. Interesting that we were on the drought monitor. We were behind. We were in some, first or second level of drought. And then last week we got some rain. So now we're actually pretty close to where we should be climatologically. And the snow this winter season was, I think we topped out at like 28 inches. So we normally get about 44. So it was a cold winter, nothing crazy, but the snow wasn't there. And I think that makes people happy.
It does make people happy unless you happen to run some sort of, snowmobile resort in northern Wisconsin or something like that. We had a bit of a snow drought here, so we're kind of making up for it with the rain this spring. Now, Ian, as far as the ice, was that an impact at all in northern Minnesota? How'd that hit you?
You know, Not really. I have to be honest with you. You can take our viewing area, and yeah, I think you kind of edge into Emily's, and Emily, if you bend around the lake, you kind of edge back over into Detroit a little. We're kind of off on our own. We have a massive DMA, from the Canadian border, the Dakotas, all the way into parts of Wisconsin, and then south and southeast, all the way into parts of Iowa. So, if you take our viewing area and you look back at winter, we really have almost three distinct zones. We've got the snowmobile zone, that's up north, and everyone loves it, and everyone gets on the lakes and does their fishing. We've got the metro zone where Minneapolis is, and it's, east central. And we didn't have much of nothing going this winter for the people who make their living in, on, or around snow. An awful winter yet again. But no, ice storm, ice for us is something that is so incredibly rare. We don't get that moderating effect of any lake like you all do, where you can get warm enough yet cold enough. Here I invite any of you to come here in January. I'd love to host you. It's not like where you live. It is brutally cold. It is dangerously cold. And that. And so we don't get a lot of ice storm mechanics set up here. We just don't have any moderation anywhere around us.
Yeah, but obviously it was a big story as it passed over into northern Wisconsin and particularly the UP, as we were just talking about there as well. And I think you touched on something, Ian, that was also a big part of at least the northern end of Minnesota, Wisconsin and Michigan, is that lack of snow to drive some of that tourism. I mean, we did numerous stories over the course of the winter up in the northern parts of the state, Rhinelander, Eagle River. They just didn't have the cold and snow that they rely on for ice fishermen, for the snowmobilers, even pond hockey, the big classics up there in Eagle River, and they just really came up short.
And it's interesting because when you bring it up like that, think about it. Minneapolis is 3.7 million. Chicago is more. Milwaukee, Detroit, big major metropolitan cities. There are some times that we just kind of go, "Oh, what do you mean? There's tourism? No, it's too cold out. There's snow and there's ice and the roads are terrible. What do you mean tourism?" But there is a big part of winter tourism here for all of our portions of the upper Midwest. And it's easily forgettable if you live in the suburbs and you go to the grocery store and you do that. And it's been 3 really bad years for winter tourism, 3 really bad years for ice fishing. It's one of those things that sometimes we tend to forget, just like farmers in the summer. When we talk about farmers, some people they stop you at the mall or wherever you are. And why do you talk about farms? I'm like, well, where do you think everything comes from?
That's right. Did you eat today? You needed those farms.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting because we talk about that in the northern and the snow drought. How did it impact your area, Emily? Like, do you think Chicago has the same weather-reliant kind of tourism?
I think we are just living and breathing for spring, summer, and fall here in the Chicago area. Most people that are here are fine without the snow, but I think a lot of Chicagoans and just even the people that live in the suburbs, if you're going to enjoy winter, you're traveling north, you're going to Wisconsin, you're going up to the UP of Michigan. So there's not a ton of like winter sports that go on in the Chicagoland area. Everybody travels out of our area to all of you guys, really. They're, fishing out the snow. But more than anything, for us, it was more about just coming shy on the precipitation. So we were dealing with drought conditions as well, most of last year, most of the winter time as well. And we finally just, climbed out of that. So now the entire Chicagoland area, we're kind of where we should be when it comes to the precipitation. We're no longer considered to have a moderate drought. We're not abnormally dry. So we're in good shape there. But the lack of snow, that really made a big difference. But of course, there are still businesses that rely on snow around here, the snow removal. And they've really been struggling the last couple of years too. When I moved here 3.5 years ago, I was bracing for Chicago winter, and it definitely gets cold, but we have not seen the snow that I was used to getting when I was just right across the lake over in Michigan. So not even close.
It's a huge difference. But of course, the weather and that giant airport in Chicago, they're connected pretty intensely as well. So anytime that you have severe weather and, with these winter storms and things, there's obviously an impact there.
Yeah, there's definitely an impact when it comes to anybody coming in and out of O'Hare. We also have Midway. And I think more than anything, it hasn't been so much about the winter precipitation that was really halting a lot of that stuff, because our winter was really mild here. We had a couple events come through, but I still think that our largest snowfall at O'Hare, I believe, was like 3.4 inches. That's it for a single event. So it was for snow lovers, it wasn't the year. Wasn't the year at all.
All right, well, let's look forward then. We've left the first half of spring and winter behind us here. Some of the outlooks as we go ahead here for the remainder of spring and into summer. Some interesting patterns setting up, starting to finally see a little bit more warmth. Let's go over to Detroit. We'll start there with you, Rich. What are you seeing as you look ahead, and we get into that exciting late spring, summer time frame?
Well, listen to this. Today, I cut my grass for the first time.
Come on.
Today, it's finally really feeling like spring. I think today's our warmest day so far this year. We're in that 79, 80 degree range right now. And it just is greening up nicely in Southeast Michigan. I mean, in the last week or so, things are getting nice and green. I'll tell you something that's interesting that's happening here in the Central Great Lakes is the water levels are coming down. So, of course, boating is huge around Chicago, Milwaukee, of course. With Detroit, we have Lake St. Clair, we have the south end of Lake Huron, and we have the west end of Lake Erie. But for the first time in 9 years, we're going to have water levels that are going to be a little below average. We've been used to these higher than average levels. And now for the first time, if the forecast holds true from the Army Corps of Engineers, Lake St. Clair is notoriously shallow, and, high water levels makes the freighter business happy and makes recreational boating happy. But with lower than average levels, I hate to say it, but there's going to be more accidents and it's going to be a bigger story. It's an interesting twist on what Mother Nature brings with these water levels. And you know what I'm talking about. I mean, these long-term trends, these short-term, rises and falls, but it'll be interesting moving forward with this boating season coming up.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, obviously, boating is a big part in Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, the 10,000 lakes, of course. And the water levels will be interesting. If I look ahead at the Climate Prediction Center, the seasonal outlooks, a lot of heat coming our way, but you're right, not a lot of rain there. And I think you're spot on. That's going to have an impact on that level of tourism. Emily, obviously, Chicago with the rivers and the lake, this dry stretch ahead, if it actually comes to fruition, is going to impact you as well.
It will. And the thing that's interesting about the Chicago area, though, is we almost can kind of forget that we have all these beaches around because you're locked in with the city, right? So you kind of have to get out of the city to notice those water levels a lot. But for folks that are in Northwest Indiana, where we have the Indiana Dunes, that's where you really notice it a lot as well. So, of course, with the water levels being higher, we've had a lot less beach, and that's something that I know that everybody has gotten used to, even up in Wisconsin, over in Michigan as well. The beaches, they've just been kind of shrinking, right? So I think for people that have beachfront property, I think we're really looking forward to, those water levels going down a little bit, hopefully to help with some of the erosion as well. But going back to the Climate Prediction Center's outlook with less precipitation, it's one of those things where I think if you don't have farms and you're not relying, on a bunch of farmland around your DMA, then people get excited about that. But, Chicago, people think of it just being the city. It doesn't take very long and you are out in farmland as well. So we still really have to be concerned about that with the lack of precipitation that's going to be possible going into this, the later half of the spring and into the summer, because we just clawed our way out of that drought. So we're not far away from kind of slipping back into it.
People will be surprised at how quickly you slip back into it.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right, let's go to Minnesota. Looking ahead, Ian, what do you see?
Yeah, what I was talking about earlier with how we've had a really nice wet spring for a spell here. We've been about a half inch below average and as we went into April, there was concern. We popped to almost an inch below average, but over the last week and a half, we've had what I call perfect saturating rains every other day. I mentioned we just had our first severe thunderstorm warning. It's been a very quiet storm spring, but we've had those day-long rains, stratiform precip. It just falls all day, and to me, it's like gold because it just saturates the ground. We talk about our aquifers, we talk about our lake levels. Minnesota is the birthplace of the Mississippi River. So if there's no water coming here, there's going to be some problems downstream, and it is a good year for us so far. I'm really happy with where we are moisture-wise. We're about average. We're back up to normal for April. The lake levels look really good. But as you mentioned, turns on a dime, right? You go 3 weeks without rain. The biggest problem we always find here is when we don't get enough rain, then the farmers want to be the story. And when we get too much rain, then the farmers also need or want to be the story. And it's really beholden on us to tell that story. As you mentioned, well, where do you think the food came from? But it's really, it's hard that in the land of 10,000 lakes, I mean, we have 6 or 7 massive lakes within our DMA, within the city DMA. Massive beaches, boating, frolicking. It is, as long as that's happening, most people are happy. And I think that's what Emily was talking about in winter. Most people don't want the snow. They'll be very happy. And so you've really got this variance of consumers when you live in the markets that we all do. You have your farming friends, you have the city dwellers, you have the people who own the recreational goods like golf courses and amusement parks and all these little tiny things, and always trying to make everybody happy every single year. It's like you wake up after the long winter and you crack your knuckles and you're like, okay, here we go. I'm here to make everybody happy. And then you realize, well, this is not going to work at all. But it
Yeah.
is, but it is nonetheless what we try and do. We really try and make sure that we are sensitive to everybody. You know, and the PGA, the Minnesota section of the PGA, I had one of the members call me once. He says, instead of saying partly cloudy or mainly cloudy, how about you say partly sunny? Because then our tee time bookings go up. And it was an interesting thought. I'm not going to be the guy
Means exactly the same thing, but yet somehow one has a better spin to it. I was recently
exactly.
asked why we needed both, and I said, well, we have nighttime, so we have to have a partly
But
cloudy.
it's interesting, right? Just a little bit of change of the verbs, and people think it's going to make their life better. They
It's
like
all
it. I get it.
perspective.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and with that in mind, we'll kind of wrap this up and we'll go around the horn here and kind of end on a more positive, upbeat note as we head into the latter half of spring and look forward to summer. Thought I'd get your individual takes on what you would recommend to someone visiting your area, what they would take in as far as, some weather related attraction. Why don't we start off with Rich over in Detroit?
Well, like the three of you, we have 4 distinct seasons here in southern Michigan. You've heard the expression pure Michigan. Michigan is so varied, with the water and with the hunting and the fishing and the skiing and the agriculture and the sports. It's a good time. There's a sigh of relief that we're coming out of winter and we're getting our first 80-degree days here at the end of April. So we made it. Everyone's breathing a sigh of relief, Now, interesting, we usually get some chilly, raw days in the first half of May, and we likely will, but we're there. We're 85% there, and there it is. Just like
It is a sigh
You
of
made
relief.
it.
It's like the Midwest Great Lakes, just, everybody has to get across that finish line. But if I've got 24 hours in Michigan, what do you need me to do in the summertime? What do I got to do? What's my
you got to go to like Sleeping Bear Dunes. You got to go to Silver Lake. You got to see the Mackinac Bridge. Mackinac Island is extraordinary. The locks at Sault Ste. Marie, extraordinary. This is massive piece of engineering. And of course, the Tigers are doing much better. So, we got baseball is back in southern Michigan. So go Tigers. There you go.
Right. I'm not sure that's the headline they're going to run. We're doing much better, but yes, I appreciate that. All right, Emily, I've got 24 hours. It's summer in Chicago. What do I have to do?
Summer in Chicago, you need to rent a cycle boat and then you can cycle boat down the Chicago River. It's amazing, amazing views. If that's not your thing and you don't want to work out that hard because it is a workout, walk along the riverfront, make your way over to the beach. We have Ohio Street Beach, which is my favorite to go to. That's right in the heart of the city. It's at the bend of Lakeshore Drive. So then you're on the beach and one way you're just looking at beautiful Lake Michigan, but then behind you, you have the backdrop of all of the skyscrapers, but you're divided from the craziness by a road that's going through there. So it's peaceful. It's nice. You've got the best of both worlds. And, in the Great Lakes region, we want to be on a Great Lake, right? We want to be at the beach.
Absolutely. No, great answer for sure. Ian, same question to you. 24 hours in your neck of the woods. What do we do?
And when Rich said, we made it. That's the way we always feel here in Minnesota. The land of 10,000 lakes. It actually ends up being just over 14,000, but who's counting? I think what you need to do, if you come to Minnesota, you need to find somebody who has a cabin so you can get out to one of those 10,000 lakes. On the weekends here, I will tell you, the city is this vacuum. It pushes everything out on the weekends and pulls everybody back on late Sunday night and Monday. So if you do come to Minneapolis, there is so much to do. Of course, we've got the Minnesota Twins downtown. We've got the Timberwolves who are rocking in the playoffs right now. We've got the Vikings who will probably win the Super Bowl this year in a gorgeous downtown, beautiful metropolitan city that when you get to Minneapolis and Minnesota, it is so undeniably green and gorgeous, and the lakes will draw you. But our big lake in the West Metro is called Lake Minnetonka. Most of you know Tonka trucks when you were growing up. They were made on the shores of Lake Minnetonka. Most of you know Minnetonka moccasins and slippers, also from Lake Minnetonka. It is a massive lake that has so much to do and see, including some of the best restaurants in the metro that you can boat up to. It's a heck of a place, and if you need a place to stay, my basement is always available for any of you. By the way, I've never been to Detroit or Milwaukee. I love Chicago, but Detroit or Milwaukee just never really made it. I've been to Door County though. Rob, and I
There you
really
go.
like Door County.
That was going to top my list. If you're going to come over to Wisconsin in the summer, you have to get up to Door County, pick yourself some of the best cherries, and buy yourself a cherry pie that you will never, ever forget. Then you got to go to the other end of the state, or almost the other end of the state, get down to Lake Geneva. Beautiful little area there, particularly in the summer. You can check out some of the beaches and see all the folks out there boating, and then end up maybe back in town for a Brewers game, get out to Bradford Beach, get along the shores of Lake Michigan. As Emily pointed out, you got to get a Great Lake in there somewhere. I want to thank all of you for your time today. I appreciate you helping me out with the first episode here of the ISO Bar. I think we had a great little chat, weather and all things included. Thanks, guys.